It gives me real pleasure to introduce to you Aneira from Trust the People. She's a founder member, so she knows a huge amount more about it than I do. It's such a good name. Trust the People is exactly what it's all about. Whether you're suffering from climate anxiety, frustration with the political system, whatever it is, people need people. And Trust the People is all about building communities and getting people to work together. So please give a big welcome to Aneira.
Thank you, Jane. So I'm just going to share my screen so that I can share a slideshow with you. So yeah, hi everyone, great to be here. And I really love what Speak Up for Our Planet does. And yeah, today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Trust the People, what we do, how we came to do what we do, and yeah, different ways that you can get involved with us as well. So Trust the People is an organization that we started at the end of 2019, early 2020, and we basically look to support the growth of community democracy and local community organising in the UK. And we've, well, in fact, I'll tell you a little bit about us. So we share the tools to help support people, support their communities in the face of local and global crises. So it was particularly highlighted during COVID how much people needed to rely on people around them. And with climate change, that is going to become more and more apparent as well. We promote participatory and deliberative democratic methods like people's assemblies. So a lot of what we do is focused around people's assemblies, but we also have team members who are exploring other tools that people can use in their communities. We run a free 4-week online education course, and it's actually running now. So it started, this one started on Monday, but we are running them kind of relatively regularly. So I'll share our website with you so that you can register interest for a future one if you want, and it's still not too late to join this one. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. And we also work to build a movement of movements. So we collaborate with other organizations that are doing incredible work as well, so that we've got this kind of big ecosystem of local community organizers spread all around the UK and actually around the world now as well. Yeah, so that we can all learn from each other and kind of support what each other's what we're all doing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we started. The group of us who set it up met in Extinction Rebellion several years ago now, and particularly we were connected with Extinction Rebellion's Future Democracy Hub, and this was the part of Extinction Rebellion that looked at kind of deliberative democratic processes and how to respond to the climate emergency by thinking about how to change our democracy. So we came together through that, and through I came and got involved initially through learning about people's assemblies. And here is an image of a people's assembly that I helped to run in a 2019 action that was getting people to kind of problem solve about ideas, what they think we could do to get the government to respond to the climate emergency. And this idea that these fantastic deliberative democratic tools exist, but they're not being used to get the wisdom of everyone who's present in our country, and politicians are making decisions that a lot of people disagree with, and the only say that we have is a vote every few years. It just felt like this was something that really needs to change. And so Trust the People was created with this aim of spreading these tools, and with the idea of a dream of having people in kind of boroughs and streets and places all around the UK using people's assemblies in their communities to make collective decisions. And when we started, no one was really talking about people's assemblies. So XR was looking at citizens' assemblies, which are selected through a process of sortition. So that one, for a citizens' assembly, they're organised often by a kind of an official body, an institution, an organisation, and people are selected to be representative of the demographics of the area where it's being held. And they cost a lot of money to run. So, and they're not self-selecting. People's assemblies are self-selecting. Anyone can participate, anyone can run them. And now we're seeing that people's assemblies or communities assemblies or popular assemblies now are taking off around the UK. And a lot of people who are involved in these projects have been kind of quite early on being participants on the Trust the People course. So yeah, what led us to set up Trust the People? I mean, I think you're all here because you're aware of the serious problems that we're facing, but there was this rampant inequality, the fact that we have a system that is tied into allowing companies to profit by pillaging the planet. There being a kind of a lot of racial inequality and division, the environment, no laws not protecting the environment. More recently, we've had the government cracking down on our right to protest, so making noisy protests illegal. And then we've also got this climate emergency where we're seeing, we were very lucky in the UK last summer. We didn't have the heat and the fires that we'd had the year before, but the rest of Europe and a lot of the rest of the world was on fire. So there was this doom element that prompted us to come together.
Signings, in-person signing ceremonies, that Operation Pollination Ambassador around the world. That
can we mute the
Governor
Nigerti? Great. So, but then in addition to all of this doom, we also felt that there was actually a lot of hope, and that these stories and these ideas of hope needed to be told, and we needed to bring people together to step into our agency and realize that there were things that we could do. And we know that there are loads of community growing initiatives. We've been working with them. There are community energy initiatives, loads in London, where communities are powering their neighborhoods through solar panels. They're sharing ideas of community fridges. There's kind of the transition network has been going for a while. And there are a lot of people kind of going on strike and speaking up against injustice. And there are kind of community financing initiatives like the Bank on Dave. So we know that there is a different story that we can tell, and that there are things that we can do to change our communities for the better. And Trust the People was about really supporting those processes. So when we came together, then the pandemic hit, and we had a lot of people closed in their houses. And that was when we first ran our first course. And we saw in the pandemic, all of these people coming together to want to help people in their local communities and people around them. This is a map of showing you that all of the COVID mutual aid groups that started up in the UK. And part of our response with Trust the People, in addition to running this course, was also thinking, how can we harness this collective organizing that tends to appear around times of like difficulty and disaster, and help it continue on once that moment has passed. And we kind of have built a system where people can stay engaged with us, but then also stay engaged with people in their local community and attempt to help that. And yeah, the core of what we do, as I said, is this course. And the course during lockdown, actually, and until very recently, it was an 8-week course. And we found that we had a lot of people attending it, particularly when they were at home in the winter lockdowns. And we're currently running our 8th course at the moment. And so we've had several hundred people go run and do our course. And the first kind of module that we look at is called personal processing. So in this module, the idea is that we are connecting with ourselves, our identity, our biases, thinking about the assumptions that people might make about us, but also the assumptions we might make about each other. And we put this at the start because we felt that this kind of like personal reflection was a really important step in going and engaging with people in your community. So so that we're aware of the story that we're bringing to our interactions, and we're aware of how the different ways that we've been shaped by society might impact how we view people. Because if we're going to build a new world, we need to do it where we include everyone, not just the people who we feel that we identify with. The second one was engaging community. So this is really looking about kind of like belonging, what kind of creates a sense of belonging in communities, whose needs are often prioritized in communities, how we can reach out to people who don't belong to the same communities as us. And again, it's about this kind of really building this inclusive world together. The next one is group support, and this is looking at how we can build healthy relationships rooted in trust with the people that we're working with. So we look at empathy, we look at some ways to respond to conflict, how to give feedback in a constructive way, so that if you are creating a working group with people who you've met in your community, you're doing it in a way where you're thinking about their feelings and needs and your feelings and needs, and just making it a healthy environment that is going to mean that your group is more likely to be successful in what it's doing and isn't going to break down further down the line. And then the last module, looking at community assemblies, so teaching people how to run people's assemblies and the different ways that they can do them in their community, the different things that they'll need to think about before they set them up, and giving people a bit of training in facilitation as well. Yeah, and as I said, we're in our 8th course now. We used to have a week that we called Projects Week, where we invited people from different projects around the UK to tell people about what they were doing. And this was to invite people to get involved with them, but also to give people ideas on things that they could do in their community. And these are just some of them. And some of these ones have actually been set up by people who participated on the Trust the People course as well. So Projects Week, we are going to kind of run a project session, but it's not going to be part of the core course. It's going to be something that we're going to do when the course ends, and then we're actually just going to mainly have former Trust the People course participants come and share what they've done in their communities. And our course participants have done loads of different things. These are just some of them. So some of them have set up climate emergency centres. Some of them have coordinated different events. So we had someone who coordinated the climate action in St. Austell, and who really kind of thanked us for the training they received, because they said that without that they wouldn't have signed up to this coordinator role. And that was a nice message in an email we got from them. They've organised a lot of people's assemblies in their communities, unsurprisingly. They've organised local events on climate change. And this is events around the UK. They've either run as local councillors for a range of parties. So the Green was a popular one, or as independents. They've set up community food growing schemes and community fridges. They've organised regular community litter picks in their local areas, nature connection and wellness walks for people in their community. And that was something that we really saw happening during lockdown. They've set up transition towns. They've organised local and global farmers assembly. We've also had people kind of set up kind of community biochar initiatives. So there's just a lot of different ways that people have taken action, and we still get messages of people saying, I'm involved in this as a consequence of participating on the course, which is lovely. It's really nice to receive that kind of feedback. Just kind of to say a bit about my personal experience for it, I have gotten so much out of it. So kind of, we are all volunteers with Trust the People. We have never received any funding, but there are always the things of kind of figuring out, making sure that you don't burn yourself out and learn how to say no to things as well. But there are so many joys that have come with it. I have learned so much from the different organizations we've worked with, from the people on the calls. They're very interactive. We use breakout rooms. We have a lot of kind of group discussion on them. It's really great to be able to support people, and we do get really, really good feedback from our courses, and people really promote them amongst their networks, which is really great. Like this last one, we kind of organized it and started promoting it 2 weeks before it started, and loads of people who'd joined the session were just posting it on a lot of their LinkedIns, sharing it amongst local groups, and on Monday's call we had like over 70 people, despite not having done so much promotion ourselves. It was just with a lot of word of mouth. It brings people together, and we found that was a real lifeline for people during lockdown. But then also since, there have been like little groups of people who have been community building in different places, who meet regularly. We kind of call them hives, and some of those hives have been going for 3 years, and they meet up in person, and they're really like good friends with people now. I myself have built friendships, like really rooted in trust with people I met with trusted people. We've gained incredible support networks of people who are experts in different fields, like particularly in the fields of democracy, who we can reach out to and get in support from. Having fun as well. It is a fun thing to do. Like, I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't fun. It's not something that makes you suffer. And then lastly, it really gives you a sense of hope, because things are quite doom and gloomy. And a lot of the narratives we hear are like that, and that can restrict our ability to imagine something else. But when you're connecting with people who are committed and making a difference and hearing about all of these incredible things happening, it does really fill you with a sense of hope. So yeah, this one is one of our feedback ones that I really like, which was someone said, yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and creating this course. It always reminds me that there is kindness somewhere out in the world. These are some of my really good friends who I met through Trusted People, and fellow organisers. Here we are doing an assembly. We were asked to run an assembly for Extinction Rebellion, and I did it in a squid hat because the theme was the nature. And yeah, I would just kind of like you to, kind of closing off this talk, one of the really key things that we want to share in Trusted People is that we have the ability to change our communities and to change the world. And a lot of that is with the first steps towards that are engaging our imagination and believing that something else is possible. So I would just like to invite you to just independently have a little go at some visioning, which is something that we ask our participants to do on the course, and think about that in an ideal society, if you could influence things, or not just you influence things, but if you could, imagine if things had gone in kind of like an ideal where we had people in power or we'd had communities claiming power who are able to change things for the better, and we'd kind of all pull together as humanity to face these multiple crises of democracy that we are facing. What would society look like in 5 years? And this is, you can go big. This is your idea. What would the ideal society look like if we had been able to face these crises in 5 years? What kind of things would there be in it? What would the working week look like? What would people's relationships look like? Just take a moment to just reflect on that. What would our relationship to nature be like? That we are nature as well. So what social systems would we have? So I'll just give you 30 seconds to think and imagine on that. And then think even bigger and think 25 years time. What would the world look like? What could the world look like if you could kind of wave a magic wand and right a lot of the wrongs that are happening? What would the world look like? So 25 years. And yeah, I would just really encourage you to use your visions and your imagination and spend time doing this, thinking about your local community to inspire you and think, okay, if this is the end point, and working back from that, what different things would need to happen now that could go into kind of creating the momentum to bring about that change. I'm just going to finish on a quote that, sharing a quote on kind of some thoughts on optimism and this importance of optimism from the book called The Future We Choose, which was by Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac, who were negotiators on the Paris Climate Agreement. So I'll just read it to you. Optimism empowers you. It drives your desire to engage, to contribute, to make a difference. It makes you jump out of bed in the morning because you feel challenged and hopeful at the same time. It calls to that which is emerging and makes you want to be an active part of change. Rebecca Solnit puts it well. Hope is an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. Hope should shove you out the door because it will take everything you have to steer the future away from endless war, from the annihilation of the earth's treasures and the grinding down of the poor and marginal. To hope is to give yourself to the future, and that commitment to the future makes the present inhabitable. So in other words, optimism is the force that enables you to create a new reality. It's not the result of achieving a task we have set for ourselves. That is a celebration. Optimism is the necessary input to meeting a challenge. Optimism is about having steadfast confidence in your ability to solve big challenges. It is about making the choice to tenaciously work to make the current reality better. Optimism is about actively proving through every decision and every action that we are capable of designing a better future. So yeah, I think it's a very beautiful quote to share, and I think highlights the importance of hope and of building these stories and these narratives that challenge the ones that are kind of currently freezing people in a state of apathy and inaction. So yeah, thank you for listening. That's a little bit about Trusted People and how we came to be where we are.
Thank you. That's a brilliant way to end. I love the fact that you're talking about optimism and hope, because I do meet people who are desperately weighed down by the feeling that everything is awful and gloom and doom. And I guess what you're saying really is, if people are optimistic and they have hope, then they'll do something. Whereas if you're feeling all gloomy, then you probably won't. Is that kind of, you know, one of the important things that...
Yes, definitely. And I think it's really key because I mean, I know a lot of people who are like, well, what's the point? Like, my actions won't make a difference. And actually that mindset, if everyone has that mindset, then we are going to be stuck in what we have. But actually, if everyone had a mindset of being like, let's do something, then think about all of that energy, all of that organizing, and all of the momentum that you could build. So yeah, it's really, really important to maintain hope and optimism and an image of a better kind of future that you can then fight for and also share with people to inspire them.
So you challenged us to envision a future in, what was it, 5 years time and 25 years time? What were the two periods you said?
Yeah, 5 years and 25 years.
So maybe some people here would like to share their thoughts about that, because I thought that was a great challenge that you handed out to us. So if anybody would like to share their thoughts, and it doesn't have to be profound, it can just be whatever happened in your head, please either put your electronic hand up or your actual hand up, whichever you feel like.
I can share some information in the chat on how you can get in touch with us. I'll share our address.
Okay.
There you go, Mary. So there's our website, trustedpeople.earth, and our email, course@trustedpeople.earth.
Brilliant. Okay.
I can see that there are some things that people have put. So
yeah. So Mary Abraham, would you be willing to talk to us about what you said? Because it sounded good, but it was very brief in the chat. If you don't have to if you don't want to. No, maybe she doesn't want to. What about you, Eve?
It's all right. I have a problem with my speech, so...
Okay, no worries. I liked what you wrote, though. A joint trusting community in one world without any boundaries. That would be so wonderful. And it's just a question of, you know, starting from here, what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yes, definitely. I can see your question, Alan. Does People's Assembly essentially need to concentrate on one subject at a time? Yeah, it depends on their purpose. So they could be called for community building, in which case kind of getting people to know each other, to be used for problem solving, in which case, or idea generation, in which case having one subject focus is ideal, but you might then have a series of people's assemblies as well. So yeah.
What about you, Eve? What's your vision?
Well, I mean, my vision was in some ways similar to Mary's, but on a smaller scale in terms of the one world without boundaries, which I love. But I was thinking more even like just within the town where I live, like less boundaries in terms of like fences between people's gardens and more like communal space where everyone is, it's not like this is my piece of land, but it's kind of our land that we are using to grow things and to you know, do whatever activities, or you know, but more of a sort of shared mindset. I also have a question, Aneira, about the assemblies. Is it something that you do a lot of as Trust the People, like actually like going out and facilitating assemblies, or is it more that you, because it's part of the course, people might then go out there and facilitate assemblies in their own communities?
Yeah, so we do a bit of both. So we get kind of requests for support to help facilitate assemblies, and we do that. But we also know that like we're quite a small team. Like the ideal thing is that people are trained to be able to run them themselves, and then you can have like so many happening at different points. So if we do run them with others in a community, then the idea is to give them the skills to help them run them themselves. But yeah, so it's a combination. We do facilitate some, and then some people in the team are involved in running others in their community. But the idea is that kind of getting as many people as possible able to use these tools so that they can organize community assemblies where they are.
Can you describe in some detail something which has grown out of one of the courses? You gave us a slide with quite a lot of examples of the sorts of things. Do you have one that would be easy to describe, or a particular favorite one, or one that's happened that where you could kind of trace the how it has happened from your course outwards?
Yeah, so I can talk a bit about, I mean, yeah, there are a couple that come to mind. Well, maybe I'll use the example of one of our team members. I won't say her name because she doesn't want me to, but she did the course a few years ago, and then has set up so many things in her local area since, and then has also come on board with the team and is helping us run the course. So we have people who get directly involved in the projects, and she's been doing a lot on biochar and research, looking at how, and I feel like I'm not an expert enough to explain it, but how using biochar in kind of in growing and putting it.
What is biochar?
So biochar is a form of it's like making it's a form of carbon that is created in a way that keeps the kind of nutrients and I guess the nutrients of wood within it. It's kind of basically biochar is like char, burnt wood that is then put into the ground around trees, and it's been shown to kind of like help kind of really restore soil, and so she's been involved with a kind of like I think it's a university research project that's looking at the benefits of putting biochar in fields with growing, and how it can contribute to soil restoration in soils that have been depleted through things. So that's a really exciting kind of more scientific, I guess, focused one. And like within the community, has also organized countless events for people to talk about climate change, events for people to come together. Some of the other things in the climate emergency centres that have been set up, those have, I mean, climate emergency centres often don't have, they're not necessarily called climate emergency centres. They're spaces that you can, if your local council has declared a climate emergency and there is an empty commercial building, you can go to the local council and say, and to the owner of the building and say, if you let us use your building, we'll get you a reduction in business rates that you are currently having to pay to the local council. And then you go to the local council and say, this organisation is going to let us use the building, and we're going to use it to kind of educate local people on climate change and build like a community and build community resilience. will you give them a reduction on business rates? Because you have declared a climate emergency, and so we're kind of doing work that you should be doing to that end. And there have been so many climate emergency centres set up around the UK, and there was one in Staines that Trust the People was really involved with. And a lot of our formal course participants actually go and volunteer with the network, and local ones near them. And they are kind of spaces where there's one in London where like they just run lots of different events. They might do film screenings about things that are related to nature. They might just have drop-in times where people can come and have like a cup of tea and meet people who are around them. So there's just they're really it's just basically a public space and a public hub, like a community hall, that you can set up if your local council has declared a climate emergency, and get funding. Because business rates can actually be quite high. If you make people a massive saving on business rates, you can say, if we make you the saving, can you give us some money to be able to set up the space in a way that we need to use? So those, yeah, I think that those kinds of models are like really exciting on creating group spaces. In terms of, yeah, another one's lots of people's assemblies. So there's a project hoping to get a kind of like a House of Citizens in the UK, which is kind of getting having like a citizens assembly alongside the democratic system, which gets the voice of peoples. And a lot of the people who are involved in that project started and who are running people's assemblies in their communities now had done the Trust the People course. So yeah, I mean, it's just lots of different ones that I can't. Well, I feel like I'm not quite describing.
Yeah, no, I put you on the spot, but that's great. That was exactly what I meant. You know, just to give us a feel for some actual things that have happened. That was brilliant. Two things. One is that Nessie's got her hand up, so we must ask her in a second what her question is. The other thing is, I know that Ian Coult, who's on the screen now, has been responsible for setting up a repair cafe, and I just wondered, Ian, did you get in any reduction in your rates from the council or anything of that kind? Was there anything of that happen for you?
Yes, yeah, I'll talk to that, and I had something else I was going to say as well. It's true, we started 18 months ago a repair cafe in Godalming. We had help from the town council because they gave us premises for free. We've grown out of those premises. We've now moved into a big hall which is owned by the borough council, Waverley Borough, and we have now agreed with them that they will give us the space for free. Great. In both cases, of course, the argument is that we're doing something which is exactly what the councils required, reducing the carbon footprint of people in this area, and helping to make a move towards the zero carbon. We've also had some additional help from the council in terms of using their office facilities for minor things like posters and so on. So yeah, we have got support from the local authorities. Can I go on? Is there anything else, Jane, you wanted on that before I wanted to ask a question?
No, that's interesting. I'm excited to hear that you've moved out of your premises because you grew too much. That's terrific. No, go ahead. I'm not going to forget to ask Nessie her question.
Yeah. Well, repair cafes are growing very quickly, like two a month in England and Wales opening. They're really growing very quickly. The point I was going to, I'm involved with the Climate Emergency Centre here in Godalming. It's run by a charity called What Next, and we do a lot of things, bringing people together in this community. But they're all things that people are doing themselves and with their friends, and it may be to do with food, it may be to do with litter picking, it may be to do with cycling. But the really big problems from an environmental point of view come from the major emissions from transport and the things that people buy. But thinking particularly about transport, and in order to do something about that requires considerable expenditure. And I wonder if Aneira has anything to say about how the results of Trust the People, the getting together groups when they want to do something, seeing what you can do is one thing, but finding the money to do it is a different matter. The money is controlled through taxes by the government as we have it at the moment. And what you're actually looking for is a different way of being governed. But unfortunately, the rules are being made by those who govern us now.
Yes, and I think that is highlights a lot of the difficulties that that we face. And yeah, I mean, Trust the People, we've been running as volunteers for 4 years now. So I think we know that, yeah, it is really hard to get funds and funding. And like part of what we kind of think, other than the successful model of getting some funding, has been the climate emergency ones, and then other people have I mean this biochar research that was kind of funded, and there have been instances of specific assemblies that have been run, or climate events that have been funded, but in terms of getting big funding to run projects, that is really, really difficult, and kind of part of our view of using people's assemblies and getting them to gain popularity is that if you show that you've built kind of a lot of consensus in a local area around an issue, then you can give that feedback to like local councils and be like, look, we have done the research for you. We've done essentially kind of like the market research of what citizens want and need in this local area. Like, can you implement it? So getting more people involved in these processes and taking part in participatory and deliberative democracy can kind of like mean that like from the grassroots, we are taking evidence and ideas to people who do have funds, and we are seeing growing interest with like councillors going along to local people's assemblies. We've actually had loads of people in councillors kind of coming and running on our courses, and we've had people from organizations like the National Trust, RSPB, so people who do have access to these things being really, really interested in the People's Assembly model. So I think that hopefully there is a shift happening. Like, I've never been hearing about People's Assemblies in the way that I have just these past few months, and I think there is a real view that actually this form of democracy is something that is going to be vital in like building consensus around issues, but also helping people who are making decisions decide what they're going to do, and having the support to do it as well. So yeah, I think that there is still that issue that actually the kind of like the purse strings are controlled by a few people and a few organizations, and having finding a way to kind of overcome that. But I think getting as many people using these tools as possible and making people believe that it's possible to have an influence and a collective voice can help kind of push local government particularly into funding things that people identify. And we know that in Frome, where flat pack democracy was launched and people's assemblies were used, and we really worked with the people who'd kind of been involved in flat pack democracy in Frome when we were starting up. They used people's assemblies to be able to decide where local government funds would go for their council, and they I think created new playground space. There was another flat pack council that believe was in it was kind of either in Wales or in Monmouth, kind of around, or just on the border, and they used a People's Assembly to help local people decide how the local government would spend its money. And so they said, okay, with if we charge this in council tax, these are the services that you can get. If we charge this in council tax, these are the services. And they had kind of 3 options. And from the People's Assembly and the discussion, and then when they had a vote following that, everyone voted for the highest rate of council tax. And the person who I was speaking to said it was everyone, when that result came out, everyone was cheering. He was just like, you wouldn't normally have people doing that, but because people had an active say in where that money was going, and they decided the services that the community was going to get, they were supportive of that. So there have been, so we have seen how like they can influence kind of like bigger expenditure. But you're right. There is still a big disconnect in kind of like how to fund a lot of these initiatives that we need in the face of the climate crisis.
Thank you.
Fascinating. Does that help, Ian?
Yes, no, thank you for that.
So, Nessie, you've been very patient. You had your hand up. You're muted.
Thank you. Thanks, Jane, and Aneira, thank you for the wonderful talk. I just wanted to clarify that Trust the People's really, its main purpose is educational, I would say, rather than, you're not actually attempting to be a campaigning group.
Yeah, no, we're not attempting to be a campaigning group. So our idea is that getting people organizing in their local communities will help them identify the issues that are kind of like the most important to them. And obviously the climate crisis is a very, very big issue, but people often find that when you are going to connect with people, kind of asking what people think is the most important issue locally will get them more engaged. And we think that having a top-down approach, like there are skills that you can share and there are ideas that you can share and topics that you can think about and discuss and ways that you can organize and things that you can do in your local area, but actually really encouraging people to connect with people locally and decide what it is they want to do is really important. Because we have this system, particularly in politics, where it's top-down. We have kind of like, we do have some devolution, but we're actually locally, a lot of communities don't have a say over what happens. It's decided by people in Westminster, and that's not helpful. People know their local context best, and getting people to connect with that local context and design responses to local issues is a really important first step. Obviously, then with these bigger issues like climate change, that you need a connection between them to be able to kind of create the political will to respond to them. But I think starting off with like looking at what local things is really, really important. Yeah.
So really, Gross, I just wondered if you'd had any collaboration with the 0 Hour and the Climate and Ecology Bill.
No, we haven't.
I just want. It's. I mean, it's. I was involved in it some years ago, and it's now called 0 Hour, and it's actually a campaign group. That's the difference. But there's a huge educational element, and the bill is in climate. It came out of the 3 Demands Bill of XR, and then was totally redeveloped by scientists and lawyers, and it includes a citizens' assembly. What I was interested about, and I know it's different from People's Assembly. I was in Cork 4 years ago, and XR Cork. So there was this kind of, I remember when Trust the People was set up, and I wondered how you kind of sit, if there's any kind of fusion between your working and educating people in People's Assemblies and connection to citizens' assemblies. Which of course in this bill that's been proposed will then be legally binding and have a political impact. That's the hope anyway.
Yes. So there are organizations that we connect with and work with and deliver training for, or like design training for as well, that are doing that work. So yes, we do think it's really important. I think this idea of having a House of Citizens with citizens' assemblies is a really great idea. But we ourselves don't directly do stuff that is kind of like, these are citizens' assemblies, but we do support work with organizations that do and are sometimes asked to kind of like, run events with them or support with training or co-design training.
But I can really see the power in people's assemblies in the way they have influenced councils, and the councillors can then have some kind of window into the MPs and the needs of the community, which of course then can translate to votes. So there is definitely a trickle up effect to people's assemblies. Thank you very much.
So there's a question from Eve that's just popped up. How do you, whoops, I've lost it. Do you want to ask it, Eve?
Sure. It was just, I wondered how you find the course participants, Aneira, and can anyone join from anywhere? Is it free? Are there like requirements?
Yes, no, anyone can join from anywhere for free. It's, yeah. And how do we find them? I mean, as I said, a lot of it word of mouth, social media, kind of, yeah, promotion, connections from people who we've met through different projects who then kind of like spread the word. So it started off being, sorry?
Giving talks.
Giving talks, exactly. Giving talks. Yeah, yes, we did that a lot actually early on. We went to and gave a lot of talks in different spaces online, and it is online. It's fully online, and it's a 2.5-hour session each week for 4 weeks. So yes,
you said it was originally 8. It's just 4 now, is it?
Yeah, it's just 4. We
Right.
found that it was 8 2-hour sessions, and now we've made it 4 2.5-hour sessions. And we found that, yeah, people now, I mean, people are so busy now, kind of an 8-week course was a lot, and we would get drop off after 4 weeks anyway. So we thought, well, let's do 4 weeks, make them a bit longer to bring in some of the content that we'd cut. But yeah, so it is, yeah, it's just lots of different spaces. We found that in, like, at the start, we had a lot of people from the climate movement, because that's where we'd all met. And now now it's quite broad, and we have people kind of who sign up, and yeah, we don't know how they've heard about us, or who are connected to an organization who's connected to us.
Sure.
So yeah.
Great. Good. Any more questions? For some reason the chat's not showing up on my screen. I keep having to click on it to see what somebody has said. Oh, that was Mary Abraham's question. You've answered that it's online. Well, thank you. Yes, Rita.
Sorry, just one question. How many people on a course, then can you take people from one area, so they can do a course and then go on to do stuff in their community?
So yeah, we have, on a course it varies. This one, in our workshop on Monday, we had over 70.
Oh wow.
And what's happened now, the more obviously it's run and the more people have recommended it to people in their local area, you've had the more people locally being trained with it. And we do find when people join with someone locally or connect with someone locally, they are more likely to kind of go on and do something. So we really encourage people to sign up with people locally as well. But yes, we do connect people up. So we ask people to put in their names or where they're based so people can connect up with people, but then we do also keep track of it. And these groups that we had that we kind of paused briefly, but we're now kind of starting again, called hives, that connect people with people in their local area. So they can meet and chat online, and then they can take that in the direction that they want. So yeah, the idea is that, yes, and we did at one point have a map as well showing where people were, but there are so many different ways of keeping things updated that we're not always that successful at kind of like managing all of them. But yes, like we do really encourage people to connect with people locally and stay connected after the course.
Yeah, because in the end, communicating online is fabulously useful, but in the end you really get stuff done when you're with people who you can meet face to face. Particularly if it's a local issue, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, wow, thank you so much, Aneira. That's been absolutely brilliant. I think I can tell by the conversations that you've excited some people and got people moving. That actually absolutely the kind of thing we want is for people to talk about hope and optimism, and how, yes, definitely from the ground up people can really change things, and most of it is to do with people believing that and just feeling that they can do what they need to do. That's not a hand up, is it, Alan? It's a clap. Is that right?
Oh,
yes, absolutely. So thank you so much. I would like just to say that anybody who isn't familiar with Speak Up for Our Planet is very welcome to stay on for just a few moments if they've got questions about it and want to learn a bit more about it. I think possibly even I would be willing to stay on for just a few minutes to answer your questions if you'd like to. There's a Liz and a Sue Lewis that are both people I don't recognise, Rita. So that would be great if you feel like doing that. But before that, just a fantastic thanks to Aneira with a plat like this.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Electronic
thank
plat
you.
or whatever you like. Thank you so much. That was really, really brilliant. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Aneira.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Yes, great.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Oh, you're
coming.
most welcome.
It was really fascinating. Thanks, Aneira.